coming out. Oh my God, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. What you just saw, I taped in my bedroom in 1981 on VHS. Oh my God, it was so inspirational. You heard what he said. These monsters are my friends, you know? They were my friends, and I know they're your friends too. You know, so we're going to bring out Rick Baker in just a second, but I just want to say it's a real honor. There's a little feedback, right? You can bring it down a little bit. I talk loud. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be here to introduce Rick and talk about his book. Rick was probably the biggest influence on my life, and I really do mean that. And when he asked me, you know, do you want to do this thing? And you've known me since you were 17. You know, you started working for me when you were 20. You know, I don't think anybody knows me more than you, maybe. I don't know, maybe his mom or his dad or something, or Sylvia. But anyway, I started as a fan like everybody did. You know, like we were all fans. Everybody starts as a fan, you know. And Rick was also a fan. He was a fan of Jack Pierce. He was a fan of Dick Smith. And I was also a fan of those guys. And through the pages of Famous Monsters, I discovered who Rick Baker was, you know. And he was this long-haired kid from West Covina, you know, making up another long-haired kid named John Landis, you know, in a movie called Schlock. As the Schlock, right? Who likes Schlock? Come on. So it was something that just, it struck a chord with me. It was like, up until that time, there was, you know, makeup men who wore lab coats and ties and glasses, and they were just like, you know, these stuffy guys. They were like, who are these guys? They come from another planet, you know. But Rick was this guy, a long-haired kid who was making monsters, and it's something that really struck a chord with me, you know. So, and lo and behold, I sent him a fan letter and kept in touch, and eventually started working for him. So, you know, without any further ado, let's introduce the man. And my name is Norman Cabrera, by the way. Just like some random guy talking, you know, like, who the fuck is this guy? All right, so without any further ado, let's do a big round of applause for Rick Baker, man.
Thank you. Sit down. We don't have a lot of time. We have a lot of things to talk about.
I know. Mostly the book, right? You know?
Yeah, which I... Hold it.
Okay, sure. There you go.
In this box is one of two that exist at the moment. And what I got really excited about, it has my name on the box. Yeah. Rick Baker, Metamorphosis. And also, I was wondering how much it weighed. It says in here 17 pounds. So,
extra postage.
Which is really weird because that's how much I weighed when I was born.
Yeah.
And actually, because I love Monsterpalooza people, we have a very special thing that my daughter Veronica thought up, who's sitting right there. This little postcard, there's a little code thing, which is good for $50 off the book. It's one per family. You have to order it this weekend, pre-order it, but you'll save $50, which is pretty cool. And it's got a, you can take a little postcard, you can have a little picture too. So I'm just gonna pull the book out and show them, then we can talk. You know.
Yeah. This and wait till you see the size of this book too, man.
That's the slip cover. So this is the thing that comes when you buy it in a store, but in the back it has designs for Boris the Animal, one of my original designs for that. I mean, some of you, I'm assuming some of you guys follow me on Instagram. Yeah?
One or two.
And whoever doesn't should, because I post a lot of cool shit all the time, you know. So, 2 volumes, volume 1, which is, again, this is, what's half of 17 pounds?
I'm terrible at math.
So much. This
That's
is
why we make monsters.
It says from 1950, which is when I was born, till 1989, and it's got all kinds of my early stuff in it. but we can show some stuff up there. But anyways, it's cool. One of the things I do want to show that I think is really cool, in the back of the book, there's a picture that was taken by Kim Walker of me in early 80s. And it's got me with the Greystoke head and the Wolfman head. I should say werewolf, American Werewolf head. And I still have both of those. So I thought, why not in volume 2 with a picture of the way I look now? So volume 2 has me with the same head, but with much bigger eye bags and much less hair. And if anything, if you're a makeup artist, there's a value to these books because progressive age, there's pictures of me from birth all the way till 69, and there's a lot of pictures of me. I mean, the book is about me, right? I mean, yeah. Here, we can put it down. So, okay, Norma, let's talk.
All right, yeah. So I got to see this book, an advance of this book, and I gotta say, you're seeing for yourself now, and when you get it in October, you're gonna be floored. And I was just, I don't know, it was one of those things where like, I felt like I was looking at the Holy Writ. Somebody was like, like Miskatonic University, you checked it out, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So we brought some previews so that you guys can see also too. Can you guys see that up there? And then, we're just going to go through it, and this isn't really like a question and answer vibe, like at least between me and Rick. We just wanted to talk about it and show you the book and all. So do you want to answer some questions a little bit later?
Whatever
you guys want to do, it's loose, it's fast and loose, so.
So this is me when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Me and my dad, you can't see the date, but with matching pajamas. I got to say, I lucked out in life, period, I lucked out, but, it started with my parents, and I dedicated the book to my parents, but I realized that not every person had supportive parents. I didn't know that when I was a kid. I was an only child, and my parents always supported me in my crazy interest, and said you can do anything you want to do as long as you work hard at it, and they were right, and without their support and without all the encouragement from them, I never would have made it. So, there's definitely stuff about my parents.
Yeah, and they let you take over one of the rooms in the house, like the master bedroom, right?
Yeah, well, my bedroom was my first makeup lab, and they had a slightly larger room. I mean, it was maybe a foot larger in both directions. And when my lab, when I was kind of like pushing the bed away and making room for more work tables, they gave up their master bedroom so I could have a bigger workspace. My mom's kitchen oven is where I ran my foam rubber. When my parents finally got enough money, because we didn't even have a garage. I grew up in a house. I don't know if there's a picture. Is a picture of my house in here?
Yeah, there should be here. Little scroll.
Well, you can see the back of it there. But
yeah. And there's a picture of you like climbing through a window. What's going on there?
I'm just hanging up my Christmas stocking.
Okay.
Yeah. But they built this little screened-in patio. They saved their money up and built a screened-in patio. It was about 10 foot square. And
there's the house right there.
Yeah, there you go. That's the house I grew up in, and that's this window. Mm-hmm. That was my. So if you ever see pictures of me in my bedroom workshop, that's where it was, right there in this room. But the screened-in patio became my. They were all excited about this because we didn't have air conditioning even, and it's like in the summer we can sit outside and be cool. And it's like, well, this would be a good place to make molds, So it became my mold room, and when I eventually bought an oven so I could cook bigger things, it's where the oven went. So my parents sacrificed a lot, and there was a track of aromaplastoline from my bedroom to the kitchen and back,
And your mom let you cook foam latex in the kitchen oven, right?
Yeah.
Like the turkey smelled like foam afterwards, right?
So you guys, if any of you guys had kids, give them lots of hug and lots of love and support, and they'll turn out to be okay. Or turn out to be warped like me.
And well, you were born in New York and then you moved to California. What made your parents move here?
Well, where I was born in New York, my dad said the only job he could get is work in a shoe factory, and he didn't want to do that. And California was the land of opportunities. My aunt lived out here in Monrovia, and we moved out. And for a short time, we lived in their guest house in Monrovia. I was like one. So I mean, I'm basically a native. You know.
And your dad, yeah, I mean, I always considered you like a California kid, you know, like when I saw you in Famous Monsters and everything, you know, you just looked California, you had the long hair, you know. I was from the East Coast, the most boring place in Florida on earth, you know, and like to me, like California seemed like the coolest thing ever, and here's like this kid making monsters, you know, and you know, he was like he was bucking the system. He wasn't like an old guy, he was like this young guy in the pages of Famous Monsters.
But look at now.
I know. But you earned your white hair, man, you know. And your dad was an artist, right? So like your dad like painted, because I remember seeing when I went to your house in the 80s, like your dad had this amazing painting of Sydney, right? Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, well, my dad was a frustrated artist. I mean, he, in his lifetime, and again, I benefited from this, I say this all the time, but, you know, in his lifetime, he wanted to draw, and his parents would, like, pull the pencils out of his hand and go, stop goofing around with this stuff, do something you can make a living at, you know. He was a high school dropout, had a variety of crappy jobs through most of my life. When I was, again, I'm talking about amazing parents, when I was in high school, my dad really wanted to try to make a living selling paintings and as an artist. And my mom, who worked in a bank, supported us. And we had very little money at that time because my dad wasn't selling paintings. He was an amazing painter, but it's a tricky way to make a living, you know. And he was doing portraits of people and portraits of people's dog for like $35, but you'd spend $25 on paint and a canvas, you know. And because of that, I mean, he encouraged the creativity in me, and I really benefited from that, you know. And he saw that even though it was kind of a strange thing to want to do, can we change this? And not, so people can't see these crappy drawings that I did.
Yeah, these are these old drawings that Rick did, and then like we're moving on to, you know, the monsters. There's some cool. This is like, man, it really does cover everything. And I wanted to pull up a picture of his dad. That's his dad. A very handsome and dashing fellow, Ralph Baker.
And that's a painting he did, Glen Springs, that he gave to Bob Burns when I first met Bob.
Yeah, and now Bob Burns was like a big figure in your life. Like he was like
is.
one of the first, and of course, yeah, and so many people. Like, if you don't know who Bob Burns, he was like Tracy the Gorilla on the original Ghostbusters show. He was Kogar in all those Arch Hall movies, and he was just a famous gorilla actor. But he's also one of the sweetest, awesomest guys. And he was very cool to you when you were a kid, right?
Yeah, he was the first person I met in the industry. I didn't know anybody in the film industry. And by the way, it's Covina, not West Covina.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, them spiteful.
You know, I said that on purpose, Rick.
Oh, okay. I forgot where I was going with that.
Bob Burns.
Oh, Bob Burns. Yeah. So, like I said, I didn't know film people. And on my 13th birthday, which was a long time ago, when Universal just started the tours, and my parents, because I'd become a teenager, they said, "Is there something we can do special for you?" And I said, "I'd really like to go to Universal tours." And in my little kid brain, I was going to hop off the tram and run into the makeup department and get a job, you know. So, you know, we drove from Covina up to Universal, and we stopped actually on Riverside Drive, very close to where I live now, where Barris Automotive is, and Barris Coach. Yeah. And I said, you know, I know that Don Post Studios is near here. I saw him on TV talking about it. Is there any way, can we get a phone book and look him up, and maybe we can see if they can go there too? So again, I was a very shy kid. We looked up the phone book. My dad called Don Post Studios, I think it was Vern Langdon, and said, you know, my son, Ricky, I go, "Dad, I'm 13. You know, my son is, you know, makes masks and you know, is a fan of the stuff that you guys do. Is there any way that we're going to Universal, is there any way we can come and visit?" And they said, "Yeah, come on out." And Vern gave us a tour of Post Studios when it was on Cleon in Burbank. And on the wall was that picture was the same one that's in the book that Bob autographed to me, of Bob as the Mad Mummy and Kogar. And it had his phone number on it, so I wrote it down. I eventually talked my dad into calling Bob again because it was too shy. You know, my son likes to make masks. Can you come visit? And they welcomed us into their home.
And he introduced you to a union guy who was very discouraging, right? You know, because at this time, you were doing work. As you can see, this is all stuff that Rick did when he was still a teenager. He was doing stuff that was better than what professionals were doing, you know? But he introduced you to a union guy, and he shot you down. It was like, you're just going to be like powdering some grumpy old, you know, starlet's nose, you know, in the union or something, right?
Yeah, well, what happened, because Bob worked at the local CBS station, KNXT, and he introduced me to the makeup man who basically just did the newscasters. And I showed him a bunch of stuff, and he goes, this is really cool. I'm going to take you to the union. Perce Westmore was the president of the union at the time, and he was hoping to introduce me to Perce, which I was excited about. Instead, I got the business rep. Perce wasn't there, and the business rep told me to give up. I was never going to get in. That, you know, and he was being honest at the time. It was nepotism. You had to be born into the industry. If I was a Westmore, are there any Westmores in the audience here? They would give you a union card with a birth certificate, you know. But for somebody like me, it was like, you know, you don't know anybody, you don't have friends in the industry, you're never going to get in. And then he said, the kind of work that you do, those jobs are few and far between, because most of what I brought was monster stuff, because that's what I like, you know. And he said, few and far between. Most of the time, you're going to be mopping sweat off of some bitchy actress. So it was like, okay, fuck you very much. I'm sorry.
It's kind of
there are children in the audience.
It's kind of a good lesson, though, to like not be discouraged by people, because people will try to discourage you while you're growing up, and you didn't let that bother you at all. Like, you just like, it made you want to do it more, right?
Well, it did bother me, yeah. Well, but yeah, it was like, you know what, I'm going to show you. You know? And I'm still trying to show him.
Yeah, that's cool. So we're going to go into Clokey Studios. You started there in 1969?
I was trying to get, you know, I was, again, my parents had very little money. When they could afford it, I'd get a quarter a week allowance. When I found a place that sold rubber in Azusa, there was a hobby shop that had this Plyotex mold rubber, they called it. It was like $8.95 for a quart. $8.95 was a lot of quarters. It took me a long time to save up quarters. And on my birthday, my grandmother would give me $1 in a birthday card. You know, but I was trying to mow lawns, though I have horrible allergies, and trying to do whatever I could to raise money. And I wanted to progress, and I said I need to get a job. So I tried to get a summer job between my junior and senior year, and didn't have a car. You know, we only had one car in our family, and that didn't work a lot of times. You know? And I went to every place I could walk to, any fast food place, any restaurant, any, you know, bagged groceries, and nobody wanted me. My dad, one of the many jobs he had, he worked as a truck driver for a while, delivering plumbing supplies, and he accidentally, there was a plumbing place next door to Clokey Productions, which for some reason was in Covina, I think because it was cheaper rent. It was 3 miles from my house, but I did stop motion, and I think it's most of us who read Famous Monsters in those days are Harryhausen fans. We had our 8mm cameras and did our best to do stop motion, so I thought, well, that'd be a cool job. So I went there with a box of stuff, some masks and all kinds of stuff. I said, I can sculpt, I can make molds, I've done stop motion, I'm looking for a job, and they said, start tomorrow. So I had to walk 3 miles to work every day and walk 3 miles home, and I got paid a minimum wage, which at the time I think I made $80 a week. But $80 a week was a fortune compared to the quarter a week.
Yeah, and for those people who don't know what Clokey Studios is, they did Gumby and Davy and Goliath, you know, those old, remember seeing those Gumby stop motion things and stuff like that, and you sculpted, you did a little bit of sculpting, you did a little bit of everything, but then you had someone there also kind of just want to discourage you by destroying one of your sculptures.
Oh, well,
or messing with it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lesson that I learned from this. And the very first things I did was sculpted Davy's mother's body. And I had this sculpture all finished, and I showed it to the production manager guy, and the first thing he did was say, oh, no, we got to do this and this and this, and just kind of mushed it all up. And it was like, oh.
and it's kind of a thing where, like, that kind of later on was like you didn't want to be the same way to people that you were.
Yeah. So if you work for me, I usually don't push my thumbs in it until you're gone. But go back to that point.
Yeah.
Go back, Norman.
Okay, you want to go back? Okay.
To that point.
Tell me when.
Keep going. The Clokey one.
Okay, that one.
So. This is Doug Beswick, who I met at Clokey's, and this is Harry Walton, who I met actually in high school. In my art class, Harry was a senior when I was a freshman, and I was in art class and I was looking and there was like these cubbies on the side, and I went, that looks like a mold. there's like a mold over there. And I went and looked, and it was a mold of like this weird like caterpillar thing. And I went, who the hell in this school is making molds besides me, you know? And they go, it's Harry Walton, he's a senior, he's doing a film project, he does stop motion. And I go, I gotta meet this guy, you know? So he was like one of my first monster buddies, you know? And I got the job at Cloakey's first, and I actually got him in over there too, you know? But Doug, again, who was just a couple years older than me, you know, same thing, it was like Famous Monsters, Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah.
We became fast friends, and the very first film I did, which was The Octoman.
Yeah.
Anybody here see The Octoman?
Yeah, Octoman. We love Octoman.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm sorry.
No, there's a big cat for Octoman, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, my first job I did with Doug, because Doug actually had a little teeny workshop in Azusa, and the very first thing I did, go back to that green picture of The Octoman, that's the maquette I did. Originally, Octoman was going to be a stop motion film. Jim Danforth was going to do the animation. When they found out what the time it was going to take and the money it was going to cost, they said, well, we're not going to do that. And so they said, we'll make a suit. And they actually had contacted people that I knew, Tom Sherman. Can you move the hand off of Octoman's crotch? The little hand's right, all right. Yeah. Anyways, they were going to do a whole big slip rubber suit, which I said, that's not going to work. A slip rubber tentacle is going to buckle like crazy. And they accepted the job, and then along comes Flash Gordon, which was a porno movie that was kind of a Flash Gordon thing. And they thought, well, we'd rather do that and make miniatures. And it was, you know, they wanted all these Buck Rogers spaceships and stuff. So they said, can you do a maquette of the Octoman? It was designed by a fantasy artist named George Barr. And so I said, sure. So I did this maquette, was the very first thing I did on that. And then they said, you know, you want to do the job? Because we want to do Flash Gordon. So Doug and I made this Octopus Man suit. We had very little money, very little time. The film was shot in 10 days in Bronson Canyon.
And you learned an important lesson on that show. They said that they would never shoot the feet, right? But the first thing they did was they put the feet on the title credits. And it's like elf shoes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make a tentacle into a foot, you know, and again, the way it was designed, I went to them, I said, it's going to look like he's wearing elf shoes, you know, and I need to put, you know, it's going to be a join there, and it's really going to be hard to work out because we're never going to see it. There's only going to be one shot of the Octoman, like a money shot. The rest of the time, it's just shadows, you know. He's all through the movie, you know, so I mean, I learned you can't believe
the opening credits.
You can't believe what they tell you.
I want to talk about Dick Smith because we jumped over that. This is a very important person in your life. There's there's some great photos that Dick sent you of his way out. The stuff.
I took those pictures.
You took those, right?
I took those when I visited him the first time.
And there's a young Rick right here.
That's my bedroom in Covina.
And Dick, so Dick came to visit you at one point too.
Yeah, you know, the same thing. You guys, I'm sure most of you people have heard this story a million times. You know, I did a report where I was supposed to look up somebody in Who's Who in America, and I looked up Dick Smith, and it had his address. And this was like in 7th grade, and I was painfully shy. I wrote it down and put it in my I had a cigar box where I kept all my most important stuff. And I just was there for the longest time. I was just too afraid to write to this guy. I mean, Dick Smith was like a god, you know. And when I graduated high school, my parents said, you know, we're going to go back to New York, where I was born, to see him, so I could meet my grandmother, who I never met, who was in her 90s, I think almost 90 anyways, and near death. And it's like, oh man, I don't want to go to New York. It's summer. Now I can make masks all summer, you know. They go, you're going to meet your grandmother, you know. And it's like, okay. And then I thought, wait, New York, you know, got Dick Smith, New York.
Yeah.
So I go, okay, it's now or never, you know. So I wrote Dick a letter, which is in the book.
Yeah.
Do we have that in this? Or is
yeah, it should be here. There's letters in here somewhere. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so we'll go back because those are the pictures I sent.
Okay.
One more. There.
Here. Okay.
So those pictures there where it says Baker's Lab with me with the caveman mask, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the picture with me with the Quasimodo that he did for Way Out.
Yeah.
And the painting that I did of it, again, in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. I sent him those pictures. I sent him this letter, said I'm going to be in New York. You know, I should probably skip over this stuff because I've told this story so many times. But anyways, you know, I thought it was going to be a very short visit. It turned into a whole day where he gave me a notepad, told me anything I ever wanted to know about how to do things. And unfortunately, this was the first day of our 2-week trip to New York. And are you suffocating in that space helmet? Are you all right? Oh, okay. I keep seeing this like space helmet lady, and I was afraid she was going to die here. Anyways, it changed my life. He told me anything I ever wanted to know, and we corresponded back and forth a lot. He would come to visit me. He sent me, in this first letter that he sent me, mind you, I sent this letter out to New York with those pictures in it. Every day I'd go to the mailbox and get the mail. The day after I sent it, I knew it was going to come, and I went anyways. And sure enough, one day I opened the mailbox. Rick Baker or Dick Smith, and it's like spongy. It's oh shit. And I opened it up, and he had a bad casting of that Quasimodo appliance, and a picture of a little big man, which he just did the first test. And it was a great letter, saying that he can't wait to meet me and blah blah blah. And he would come when he was in LA. He would visit my bedroom laboratory, and I got to watch him do the little big man makeup.
And you eventually worked with him on The Exorcist. That was the first thing you did with him, right?
Yeah.
And it was the redo of the makeup because William Friedkin didn't like the original super masky, version of Reagan, so he wanted a more subtle.
Did you just call a Dick Smith makeup super masky?
Well, I'm just quoting. I'm quoting Friedkin.
It's funny, not mine. A little off topic a little bit. The other night I was watching on Amazon Prime the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Jack Palance, that Dick did the makeup on.
Yeah.
That is great.
Oh,
makeup. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's again, Dick Smith was one of those people, like when you saw his work in the pages of Famous Monsters, it stood out. It was like you had pictures of the very first issue you saw of Famous Monsters where Dick Smith did the Way Out makeup, and he did The Man Who Lost His Face and the Dorian Gray, and his stuff really was like a cut above the rest. And then you tell us a little bit about The Exorcist, because you came into...
Well, Dick was pretty much a one-man show, worked in his basement, teeny little basement in Larchmont, New York. Prepared all the appliances for Reagan's makeup, which he did 4 or 5 different tests. They chose one. He had them all, 50 some odd copies made. First day's filming, he puts it on. Linda comes walking out. One of the grips or somebody says, "Oh, she's got her mask on now." And Billy Friedkin, who was pretty full of himself at the time, which he even admits, because he just wanted Best Oscar, Best Director, Best Picture or something, I don't know. And he looked at it and he goes, "It's too masky, do another one." And they're in production now, and Dick had worked for months to prepare this stuff. And it's like, do another one. I mean, we're filming, and this is, you prove this. Same old story that happens to all of us in the business, So he called me up, and it's like, "Rick, I need help. I need somebody to work in my lab to make these new pieces and to make molds and to get the stuff because I'm going to be on the set. Would you consider coming and living in my house and working in the lab, in basement, and I'm packing my bags. And, let me think about this for a second, Dick. It's like, okay, yeah. So that was an amazing experience. I was like 20.
And so the revolving head dummy, that was one of the things you helped him to cast on, and sculpting some pieces for him.
I did a lot of the work on the dummy. I made all the molds. I cleaned up all the stuff. The stuff I helped him take the life cast. Her poor little Linda Blair was 13, just turned 13, I think. Had full head life mask with hard scleral lenses, teeth, and an expression at 13 years old.
Oh yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, people should have been arrested in that movie or what they did to her.
Well, what they had her do in the film too, which we won't talk about. It was children in the audience.
It's a great film, though. Great film.
Oh, it's a beautiful movie. It's really fantastic.
And I got to, when they filmed the opening sequence in Iraq, I got to assist Dick with Max von Sydow's makeup. And mind you, my assistance was basically just holding a glue bottle. I did make up his hands. I can claim those.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it was such a cool experience. Max was. I always say this. He's like one of the most perfect people I've ever met in my life.
That's cool.
Never had anything bad to say about anybody. Just was a really kind, gentle, amazing.
And that makeup to this day still reads so natural. It's almost like he's aged into that makeup. The way Max von Sydow looks now, it's like he aged into what he looked like back in 1973. So let me ask you about Schlock. There's this picture here of like Rick with like the super cool long hair and stuff. And this is one of the photos that was printed in Famous Monsters, and I was like, wow, like there's a kid in a t-shirt and long hair like making monsters, and this thing was so damn cool. And it was this beautiful ape makeup. And in my opinion, when I saw this, I'm like, this looks just as good as John Chambers' work in Planet of the Apes, And I was like, but it's being done by this guy, you know? And it's like, how do I do this? You know, this was a pivotal moment for me, you know, seeing this combination of photos and whatnot, you know? And then, so Landis was like, you know, quite a character when you met him, right?
Yeah, well, Schlock came about because, again, I would go to Don Post Studios to buy materials. We didn't have motion picture effects and all these cool places that sell everything you need to do your job. I would have to, you know, drive all over the place to find stuff. And Don Post would buy, you could only get polyurethane foam then, and you'd have to buy a 55-gallon can. No way I was going to use that much or need that much. So Don would pour the components into like an old paint can and sell me, you know, a gallon of it. No material safety data sheets.
Yeah.
Didn't tell me that.
They were different times.
No, it didn't tell me it makes cyanide gas, which I found the hard way by mixing it up in my bedroom and just about dying. But when I'd go to Don Post, I would bring pictures of stuff I had made. And this was the only time in my life I actually had a business card that said, according to John, it said Rick Baker Monster Maker, which it didn't. I wish it did actually, but it said Rick Baker Makeup Artist, masks, appliances, and stuff. And John Landis first went to John Chambers because John worked as in the mailroom at Fox, and he knew Chambers. And you know, he said, "I'm going to do this movie. It's, you know, low budget, you know, thing." John Chambers didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
He gave him a $150,000 price tag to make it.
Which is like what his whole movie cost to make,
Yeah,
right?
no, the movie was $30,000.
Oh, okay.
So then he said, well, maybe you should go to Don Post. And he went to Don Post, and John, you know, very hyperactive, ADD, very clever guy, you know, but comes on real strong, you know, and went to Post. They didn't want anything to do with him, and they went, oh, wait a minute, there's this kid that comes in here to make stuff, you know. Gave him my card. John called me up, and you know, said, I'm making a movie, you know, I need this gorilla suit, he said at the time, and came out to my bedroom in Covina, and again, I was still in my shy stage, you know, and my bedroom was this is where all my stuff was, and you know, I worked hard on this stuff. John comes in like a tornado, you know, and was loud and saying all kinds of crazy stuff and like touching my stuff, you know, and it's like, Mom, this guy's scaring me, you know. But fortunately for me, things worked out because, I mean, John became so important in my life. I mean, besides, you know, Schlock got me in Famous Monsters of Filmland, which I've been in most major magazines, but nothing that had the impact of being in Famous Monsters.
That's correct.
That was my magazine.
Absolutely. Let's hear for Famous Monsters.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But also, I mean, you know, American Werewolf.
He talked to you about American Werewolf at the time you were doing Schlock.
As I was making
them
them up.
It wouldn't be made till 10 years later, right?
Yeah. No, he'd already written it at that point.
He had written it, right.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and also American Werewolf, and then on Into the Night, I met my lovely wife, Sylvia. And,
that's right.
So, I mean, he's been very important in my life. You know.
Yeah. So you did a slew of like low budget sort of blood and guts kind of movies, which always fascinated me because I grew up at the drive-in and I grew up at those, you know, dollar movie houses. And one of the movies I saw was a movie called Zebra Force. And I wouldn't find out till later that you did it, but you did a bunch of that sort of stuff where a lot of Larry Cohen, like blood and guts kind of stuff too, just to kind of keep the ball rolling with, like, you know.
Well, yeah, just trying to get a job.
Trying to get
you know,
a job,
I mean,
yeah.
and it was, you know, I couldn't work in a big film because you had to be in the union.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, in the 70s, when I started doing this, they made a lot of low-budget independent films. And from the Octoman and from Schlock, I would get my next job. And my Larry Cohen introduction happened because John was editing Schlock at what's now Sony Studios, used to be MGM, and Larry was editing him in Bone, this movie that he did, and he needed some makeup for a scene he was going to shoot, and he saw the Schlock Frabis on the Moviola, and he goes, hey, who did it? I need a makeup guy. You know? And that's how I met Larry, and then that led to It's Alive.
Yeah. It's Alive, which is, I absolutely love It's Alive. I mean, who doesn't love It's Alive, right? Come on. You know, It's Alive. I'm going to jump to, you know, I just want to say, like, it's almost impossible to cover Rick's, you know, 50 years doing this, you know, so I'm going to move forward to a couple of little things. I really did want to talk to you about It's Alive. So It's Alive, you know, you made this baby. Once again, Larry Cohen told you, you're never going to see it, you know, and it's thing, but it ended up being like something that he showed over and over and over.
Well, not that much. I mean, he was much more true to his word than the Octoman people were. You know? But I mean, I was at Dick Smith's house working on The Exorcist when Larry called me about It's Alive, and he said, I'm going to make this movie about a baby that when it's born kills everybody in the delivery room and runs around LA and kills everybody, you know. Yeah, sounds great, you know. How the hell are you going to do that, you know?
They wanted to put a chicken in a baby suit.
Well, that's what he said. He goes, you know, how about if you make a suit for a chicken? And I went, a chicken? You know, and he goes, yeah. And I go, is it supposed to be a human baby? And he goes, yeah. I go, I don't think that's going to work. He goes, how about 2 chickens? And he said, you know, that might be kind of cool. You know, they like fight each other, you know? Yeah. And I said, no, I don't think so. He goes, maybe a cat. And I go, well, you know, I'll be back in town like in a week, and we can discuss it, you know. And then so I came back, discussed it with him, and he goes, I'm never going to show the baby. I just want something there on the set for the actors. I need it in 2 weeks. So I went to my bedroom and sculpted the baby monster. I did a couple of real quick sketches. I didn't even show him. Yeah. Just more for my own sake. Sculpted the baby monster, made it in 2 weeks. And he was way into production of this film. He films all his films in his house. If you ever see a Larry Cohen film and there's a house in it, it's Larry Cohen's house. And, in fact, I just watched Bone again on Amazon. I don't think I ever saw it before, and it's all Larry's house, you know. So, but anyways, I said, you know, can I bring the baby by, hold it up in front of the camera just to look at it on film? He goes, there's no reason to because I'm never going to show it. I go, just humor, you know. Mm-hmm. So I bring the baby there, and we decided on, I was just going to make a polyurethane foam filled, you know, latex thing with a wire armature that we could just reposition a little bit. Bring it to him, he goes, I love this thing. He goes, let's shoot a scene with it. He goes, make her crawl along and climb up on Sharon Farrell's lap and hug her. And I go, Larry, you said you were never going to show it. This is really different than never showing it, you know. And I didn't even bring my makeup kit. I didn't have anything with me but the baby, you know. And it's like, do you have any like tools or anything? So he had like a pair of pliers, and I got a coat hanger, and I tried to make it work. And I just said, this isn't going to work. How about we do this? Let's make a suit or a partial suit or head that fits a person, and you could shoot them in front of like black velvet, just going, you know. Okay. And I need it in 2 weeks. So I talked my girlfriend at the time to let me do this on her. Took a cast of her with these wax teeth in, made this head in 2 weeks, called up Larry, I'm ready to film, nowhere to be found. I called him, like, I think 6 weeks went by. He decided he was going to go to Hawaii and have a vacation. Meanwhile, I worked on this thing like day and night for 2 weeks to get it done. Again, same old story, we've all done this a million times. So when it comes to time to film this, same thing. He was like, make it do this, make it do that. And he got, because the baby's supposed to be little, he rented a fiberglass Paul Bunyan that normally holds a tire out in front of somebody's tire shop. And he goes, I want her to be up on top of the ladder and bite the Paul Bunyan on the neck, you know. Meanwhile, she's blind, you know. I mean, I made these eyes, you know, these resin eyes that I pop it in and out, but she can't see when she's got them on. She had these wax teeth that she wore, you know. So I'm saying to Elaine at the time, I said, well, be careful when you try to bite this thing on the neck because the teeth will break, you know. And she's going, I don't want to get up on this ladder. It was like a 12-foot ladder, you know. And he goes, I can't see anything. You said I was just going to sit in a chair and I wasn't going to, you know. And I go, you know. So, and one of the scenes they were shooting with this Paul Bunyan is the baby's going to get shot in the head, and the special effects guy that was doing the squib was named Crazy Harry. And I had worked with Crazy Harry on the Octoman and a number of things, because he was the only guy in town, basically, who did this stuff, and he was crazy. I mean, he deserved his name.
He lived up to his name.
So I said, you know, Elaine, you don't have to worry, the squibs are just real, you're not even going to hear it, you got a giant head with all this foam rubber on it, not going to be a big deal, you know. Gets up on the ladder, I put the eyes in her up there, and she goes, I can't see, I'm scared, and it's all right. And Larry's going, bite him on the neck, bite him on the neck, you know, and they're filming, and she's like, no, the neck, and I go, she can't see, you know, I go, to your right, don't bite too hard, you know, like we're yelling stuff, and then so when Crazy Harry lets off the squib, it was this huge explosion. And he decided, and I think rightly so, you know, well, the baby's supposed to be little, if I use a regular squib is going to be too little, I need to do a bomb. Anyways, I won't remember the rest of the stories in the book.
But it's a little known fact in It's Alive 2 that Greg Canham played one of the babies in It's Alive 2, right? Do you guys know that?
Well, Greg, when I first hired Greg, I think that was the first thing we did together, actually, and what we did, and this is kind of an embarrassing story that I'm going to tell about Greg. No, it's as much my fault as his. We decided to make the teeth out of acrylic, and my wife at that time, Elaine, her teeth were kind of a little crooked, and so we made these acrylic teeth, and Greg's like trying them on her, and he's like, well, they're not quite going in, they're not quite going in, I'll push a little harder, and like, snap. And these things went into her mouth, and we could not get them out. I mean, it was like, pulling out like this, you know, and I ended up saying, hey, let's get some really scalding hot water, and you put it in your mouth, and you go like this, and maybe it'll swell up enough. I eventually had to like Dremel in her mouth, and you know, so thanks a lot, Greg.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna come back to this stuff that I'm scrolling through right now, but I wanted to show, since we're talking about Greg. Greg also helped you with the Without Warning alien, which is also really cool. It's in here somewhere, but as you can see. But anyway, we'll come back. But you know, this beautiful alien, which was for a low budget movie, right? But then you handed it over, you know.
It was like many films. You know, it started out and got.
This thing was awesome, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Damn thing.
Well, you know, at the time they didn't think so. They and what was great about this, I mean, was this is my introduction to Kevin Peter Hall.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah.
Who he would later play Harry and the Hendersons, right?
The Predators.
Kevin Peter Hall, everybody. Yeah.
And
Great guy.
when they contacted me about this movie, they said, we want to do this alien, we want you to do this makeup, you know. And I go, let me be involved in the casting, because I want to pick the right face and the right person for it. And so we had this open casting call in Hollywood, and Kevin had just gotten off the bus from St. Louis or wherever the hell he was from, I forget now, and got that casting call in the newspaper, and we're looking for tall people to play an alien. And you know, I was watching these people come in, and everybody was like, nothing excited me.
Yeah.
And the 7'2" black guy comes in who could really move, and it was like, I want that guy. This is the guy, we don't need to see anybody else. So Kevin liked me because I got him his first job. I liked him because he was 7'2" and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I did this alien, and then Alien came out. And they go, well, this thing is shitty. This looks like a 1950s alien, you know. And actually the movie got postponed. I was doing something else when it started out, and that's how I gave Greg Balls and he took off.
That's cool.
And changed the eyes.
That's awesome. And then speaking of aliens, we're going to go back a couple steps. Star Wars, right? Who hasn't seen Star Wars? Right? Okay, so these Star Wars aliens, I saw in the pages of Starlog, Rick was holding that devil mask, which was like seriously one of the coolest masks I had ever seen. So you were doing Melting Man at the same time, and then Star Wars came along, right?
Yeah, I actually was just right at the end of doing King Kong, which at that time, that was my first big Hollywood movie, you know, big budget Hollywood. It was the most expensive movie ever at the time, you know. And I got the script for a film that was called The Ghoul from Outer Space. And I went, I can't go from the biggest movie ever made in Hollywood to a movie called The Ghoul from Outer Space.
Yeah.
And the script itself, frankly, wasn't that good, you know. So I said, well, I don't want to say no, I'll just give an outrageous price. So I said, you know, to do all this work, that's going to cost $10,000. And they said, okay. Okay, I'll make The Ghoul from Outer Space, you know. They later changed the name to The Incredible Melting Man.
And that's what we're seeing right here.
Yeah, you know, Rob worked on it with me on his evenings and weekends. Isn't there a picture of it? Yeah, there Rob did
There's a picture of Rob right here.
That's Rob Bottin.
Young Rob Bottin. Like, 16 years old or something?
Yeah, he came to me when he was 13, never
13,
having done makeup before. And you know, I trained him like I never trained anybody else. And then he like kicked my ass when he did the thing. and just showed everybody up, you know. But that's also, go back one more.
Okay.
That's Rob in the makeup. And those in the Melting Man makeup, this was a test.
Yeah.
And they made me change some things on it, which I didn't, you know. But those are my original sketches for the Melting Man.
Yeah, over here. Yeah. As you can see, I mean, we're going. There's so much to cover here, and we're like moving pretty quick, in my opinion. But this is really some phenomenal stuff. I want to cover Kong really quick too, because Kong, I mean, as a massive, right? King Kong, the 1976 Kong for me was. I drew pictures on my notebook of Kong over and over and over. Me and my friends were just obsessed with King Kong. And I know you're not a big fan of the suit, but it's such a great character. I mean, it feels alive, you know?
I mean, the movie's grown on me more in time. I mean, I was such a fan of the original, and they had such a bad attitude about the original when I was working on this. It kind of like made me mad. Yeah, you know. And the fact that I designed Kong and sculpted Kong and basically built the suit and played King Kong, and I got a credit as a special contributions, which I'm actually amazed I even got a credit because they wanted everybody to believe it was a 40-foot robot that didn't work. You know.
And they also got an Oscar, and you were involved with that, you know, and stuff is basically like another, you know, sort of. But you know, the cool thing is that I just want to say one thing. People do find out who really do those stuff. You know, like people will eventually, people who are students of this stuff all know that you did this sort of thing.
Well, it also came out in Time magazine, and that's,
I mean, and it was all over the news,
And that's a funny story because I would put the suit on first thing in the morning when I get there. I put the hard scleroplastic lenses in my eye, sit in front of an E-fan just to blow air on me because it was hot as heck. See, I'll change my, because it was all blue screen stuff I did, and this was in photochemical compositing days where you needed a lot of light and even light. It was the whole crew's in like tank tops and shorts, and I've got a bear hide suit on with these lenses. You know, but anyways, John Gillerman comes up to me and he goes, "There's a guy from Time magazine is doing a big article on King Kong, and we don't want him to know that you play King Kong, so that if he comes by, you're not supposed to tell him that you're King Kong." And I go, meanwhile, I'm wearing this fucking suit. And I go, what am I supposed to tell him, John? And the thing that they did that was really stupid is they showed him a whole bunch of footage, and it was all me. And they go, "Now we're going to take you and show you the big King Kong," which wasn't finished. So they showed him, they took him to the mill at MGM and showed him this uncompleted King Kong, after just showing him, half-hour footage. And the guy said, "Well, I want to see the finished one. Show me the finished one. The stuff I just saw. I don't care about the unfinished one." And they went,
The big mechanical thing was based more like a caveman idea, too, right?
Well, no, originally when I went in to talk to them, they wanted Kong was going to be a disaster movie. It was in the age of disaster movies.
Yeah.
That's why they hired John Gillerman, who was credited for directing Towering Inferno. That was basically Irwin Allen directed it. But they said, they wanted Kong to be a caveman. Mm-hmm. What the hell's wrong with you guys? 25-year-old kid, was telling them, how to do their movie. But I think it was right.
Now, we're almost out of time, which is really unfortunate. We have about 10 minutes left total.
Did we? I talked about this, right? 50.
Okay. And Rick, you're going to be signing stuff too, right?
There's a poster with this picture on it that I'll be signing out there.
I mean, I honestly think we can conduct this for like 10 hours, and I'm sure people would hang out, So
the book's cool, right? Just go through the rest of the
really cool. But I want to touch really quick on The Howling, because it's like one of my favorite movies. And
more than American Werewolf?
It's American Werewolf, right? Busted, no. But Rick was first supposed to do The Howling, and he did this design. Now I have a question. When you did this design, was it something that was considered as the design for the show, or how did that work out? Was it?
Hey, look, it's Jake Garber.
Yeah.
Oh, they came in right at the end.
And then Greg.
Oh, we're gonna have to start over again.
I know. Oh, we're gonna start over. Okay.
Go back to the first day.
All right. But so you did this design initially as
John, like I said, when I did Schlock, told me the whole story of American Werewolf, told me he wanted to do a transformation like it had never been done, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I got really excited about it, was thinking about what I was going to do for all these years, and it was like 10 years passed, and I thought, it's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. Joe Dante and Mike Fennell contacted me about The Howling, and it's like, okay, now's the chance to do my werewolf movie. So I start doing this werewolf. I just sculpted this just to see, I was thinking more of like a mid-transform thing, not the final wolf.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I get a call from John. Good news, we're going to make American Werewolf. Mm-hmm. It's like, I got the money. It's like, oh shit. Well, I made a little bit of a mistake, and I accepted this other werewolf job. And I kind of told him how I was going to do it. He goes, I won't say the bad words again. But he used words I never even heard before. And I go, well, I'll make it all right. So I suggested to Joe and Mike that they use Rob Bottin, that I consult on the film. They knew Rob because I got Rob the job to make the Piranha one for his Piranha movie.
Yeah.
And Rob took off and used some of my ideas, a lot of his own ideas, and made it a Rob Bottin version of it.
So was Night Skies before or after American Werewolf?
Same
It
time.
was at the same time. Like you were working in the studio at the same time, sort of the secret for Night Skies, right? Now, if people don't know what Night Skies is, before Spielberg was going to do E.T., he wanted to do this horror movie called Night Skies, right? And
he was producing and he wasn't directing, and Ron Cobb was going to direct.
Ron Cobb, the great Ron Cobb from Alien, the designer, was going to direct, and John Sayles, who wrote The Howling, was going to write the script, you know?
Yeah, it was cool because it was a family of aliens. It was based on a supposedly real encounter that happened in Kentucky, where this family of aliens harassed these people. And I like making different characters, so I wanted to make each an individual character. But I said, it was at the same time as American Werewolf, and John's the one who told me Stephen wanted to talk to me about this. And I don't think I can do them both. And he goes, if you think you can do them both, that'll be fine. And he's fine with that too. So I was doing them both at the same time. What happened was Night Skies, there was on Werewolf, there was a Screen Actors strike, so they couldn't cast actors, so we couldn't do a lot. And the boys, the crew that I put together, Steve Johnson, Tom Hester, all those guys, it was like training period first, so I got through a lot of training with them, and I was doing all my Night Skies stuff and concentrating on that. And it turned out to be,
I wish they would have made Night Skies instead of E.T. Sorry, guys.
Well, the thing was,
I want to see that, man. I want to see an evil alien messing people up, man.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, at the time I was devastated when this happened because Steven Spielberg's the great American filmmaker, and he's like bad mouthing me and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh my God, But in hindsight, the right thing happened because it allowed me to concentrate on American Werewolf.
Yeah.
American Werewolf probably wouldn't have been what it is if I was doing Night Skies at the same time. And who knows, that may have been the end of my career. I could have screwed up both of those movies.
Yeah, and American Werewolf became the first Oscar, to be awarded as a regular category, And as you can see, these pictures are just phenomenal, there's this is maquette. I don't remember ever seeing this at the shop. This is like an earlier version.
Yeah, I was just thinking about because John said he wanted a four-legged hound from hell. I just did something that was wolf-like, just to get familiar with the anatomy. And surprisingly, I didn't keep that for some reason.
Yeah, I've never ever seen that, but you can see there's all the mock-ups of the in progress before the hair's trimmed and all that kind of stuff. Just a phenomenal amount of work. And there was kind of like the crew of guys who helped you out in England and all that stuff in here. And then you did Videodrome, and this is crazy. As you can see, we had an hour to work with, and we only got up to Videodrome, So we have there's 20 more years of cool stuff on this. There's Greystoke, which I really, really wanted to talk to you about as well. Greystoke is just beautiful.
You can take 20 minutes of the Creep Show panel.
Really? Okay. Well, that's Greg, man. Thanks, Greg. All right, they're going to do the panel after us, so if you guys are cool, we'll do another 5 minutes or so. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Thanks, guys. I want 25 minutes.
20. 22 and a half. There you go. So that's very cool. So we're going to do another 5 minutes or so, whatever. But there's a lot to cover. Greystoke was phenomenal because it's they let you go crazy with these designs because they wanted basically a fantasy ape, right? It didn't have to be a gorilla. It didn't have to be a chimp.
Well, that's the way it is in the book.
And that's the way it is in the book. Right? So that allowed you to pick character pieces and stuff from different species of primates, correct?
Yeah, it was just, they were called apes in the book. They weren't gorillas or whatever. And what they really wanted, I was actually approached about Greystoke many years before it was actually made. And this is when Robert Towne was going to do it. Robert Towne read Jane Goodall's books and made, notes. And it's I want to see the veins throbbing in their arms, And I went, on every suit? I go, that sounds like an insert to me. We could do that on one. You go, no, I want every suit. I want the male apes to be able to get an erection and to ejaculate, and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And this was at a time when, on American Werewolf, it's not like it is now. It was hard just to find a crew. I brought Steve Johnson out from Texas, and Kevin Brenner from Connecticut. I had to bring people and show them how to do stuff. And this was when he was first talking to me, I don't think there's enough people in the world to do this. And it wasn't like it is now, where you see all this great work being done all over the planet. You know? Amazing work.
Yeah, you had a cruise here, but you also had to assemble a crew in England also.
Yeah, well, I brought my core group of people, Greg Cannon being one of them.
Right? Yeah.
And
it's just beautiful stuff. And you did one that was like a puppet too, right? That was like Is this the
that
puppet?
one was the puppet sculpt. I actually sculpted that one in LA and brought it to. We did all the work in England, and that picture of me with all the ape heads, I sculpted them all simultaneously. I'll do this one, that one, and kind of work them all just because I wanted to see them as a group and make them individual characters. And those were all sculpted out of water-based clay, which I usually would just use in making a mold. In England, they didn't have a good plasticine, and I quite liked. The water-based clay worked great there, and I was really happy working with that. But it took me a little while to get it down. Now, the ape that's on their foreground there was the first one I sculpted. That was just prototype.
And there's a picture of the sculpt of this in Cinefex. I remember seeing that. That's a profile shot. So we're going to move on to another really a biggie, which is Thriller. Michael Jackson's Thriller. Which I know a lot of people, MTV, like play this on constant rotation, like the making of. And I remember I would, it would run for 24 hours, and it was like so many people I know and myself just watched this thing over and over and over because it was just had this hardcore making of all this cool stuff. I mean, it's phenomenal, and you can see here, like, you cover it well in this book. There's all this beautiful stuff. There's all the zombies and stuff, which is kind of EC Comics inspired and all that stuff.
Greg Cannon.
And Greg's in one of these.
Greg over there.
This is Greg right here, yeah, actually. It's like Dave Miller. That's Dave Miller, right? That's Tim Lawrence, right? Jack Ricker. Yeah,
I'm not
so
sure
you used the guys on the crew all kind of did their own makeup.
Well, Thriller happened very quickly. And John gave me a call and said, Michael Jackson wants to do a music video for the song Thriller. The song? It was like, Little Michael Jackson? And Jackson finally goes, they don't call him Little Michael Jackson anymore. I didn't know the song. He goes, I'll send you the song, get some ideas. So he sent me the song, and at that time we had cassette tapes, audio cassette tapes. I had two little Walkman. The one I was playing the song, the other one I was like just free associating what I was visualizing as I was hearing it. We eventually arrived at just doing zombies. I wanted to do every monster in the world, a cool version of Frankenstein, Dracula, and all these things initially. But long ago, one of the things I had notes on in my many notebooks was I wanted to do a musical zombie. I thought it'd be a musical zombie movie. I thought it'd be funny to have zombies pulling out guts and start singing and dancing, so we ended up with dancing zombies. But the thing, it happened so quickly, and the dancers weren't cast until like 3 days before we filmed. And I said, I cannot do light casts, sculpt custom pieces for these people in 3 days, because there was 20 of them were in Illinois. And I said, and the makeup should be cooler than what we can do in that. So all my crew, we all have life casts of ourselves. We could start today making zombies that are more the close-up zombies. And it was great. So like that's me, and the ones that come out of the graves and all that stuff are all my crew basically. Tom Hester slides the top off in his cool like skeleton zombie thingy.
You got Dave Miller making up somebody there too, right?
Yeah.
That's another cool thing about the book is that you do show all various people who are part of your crew and stuff like that. It's amazing.
There's
There's like Starman. This is there's Sylvia right there.
This is where I met my wife, Sylvia.
Sylvia.
In case you don't know, this was in front of Frederick's of Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard in the middle of the night. And I was a drug dealer and she was a hooker. And it was in this film called Into the Night. And she was actually the hairstylist on the film. And John Landis, in the typical John Landis way, came into the makeup trailer and said to her, I want you to play a part in the movie. It's a part you're born to play. No, a hooker. But the funny thing is, we have a photograph of the night we met. Because we're in the same scene together.
That's cool. So I want to just cover two quick more things, and then we'll wrap it up. Because I know we got the Creep Show panel with Greg Nicotero coming up next. So I know you guys are all going to really dig that. We got right up to the first two movies that I did with you. And I was 20 years old. You were cool enough to hire me, like this kid from Florida, and I helped you on Rat Boy, and most of all, like your favorite creation, right, which is Harry. That's I mean, it was, Harry is really a marvel. And there's Kevin Peter Hall right there, and just, I can tell you guys, being a kid and, this 20-year-old, kid from Florida and seeing, Rick bring Harry to life was still to this day one of the coolest moments, just experiences of my life and film jobs really, because it was just a living, real living, breathing thing. I mean, this thing is just absolutely,
I mean, that's the thing that's so cool about what we do, though, isn't it? And I think I might have said that in that clip you were showing, that there's something that at first is just an idea in your head, and you know that in time you're going to be standing in front of this thing that looks alive and acts alive, and it was just an idea, and it was clay that you push around, and I mean, I know, and you guys didn't hear about this. You can get a $50 discount on the book. I know you're hurting for money, so it's,
I bought it like 4 months ago.
But I'm hoping that some kid will get hold of this book and be inspired to be creative. I mean, you can make a living being creative. We know this.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, discouraged to my father. I really get a kick out of that. I mean, we're talking about Thriller. When I didn't know they were going to do the making of Thriller until the day that this crew shows up filming when I'm taking Michael's life cast. And John said to me, by the way, there's going to be a camera crew here filming this. We're going to do a making of. I would go, no. I mean, it always looks so horrifying when you're doing a life mask. I go, I really don't want them. They're going to be in the way, and they were in the way. And but thank goodness, because so many people were inspired to become makeup artists. I mean, when people come up to me and they said, making a Thriller inspired me to want to do makeup.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. And the thing about this book, really, it's beautiful pictures. It's this chronology of your career and all that kind of stuff. But also too, the story is a great story. It's a story of you. It was really a long shot for you to do what you're doing, and you ended up winning 7 Oscars. So you're just a kid from Covina. And it's like to me, before you even became the Rick Baker that everybody knows, there was that thing of being a kid and making these cool monsters and then turning that into a career. That's why it's kind of inspirational too, so that's why it's like, I really feel like, it's a gift to everybody,
No, I mean, if this idiot can make it, anybody can, but I mean, it's true. I mean, and if you really do find something that you love, I mean, I know so many people that are successful in business, in the world, doing something that they love, and I did this out of love more than anything else,
Yeah.
And again, that's one of the reasons I retired, because I was starting to not love it, because it was the industry can be very difficult, as you know.
Yeah.
And now,
but you never became jaded, which is really cool.
Well, but the thing is, I want to make stuff, and I'm getting older, and I know that things hurt, and it's not as easy, and all, and I make stuff every day now, and I'm loving it. I'm loving being retired because I can make what I want, and I don't have to deal with all the BS of the movie industry, so that's really great. But people on my Instagram goes, I thought you were retired. And I go, I didn't retire from being a creative person. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I have fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to wrap this up. Rick, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. One big hand for Rick Baker.